What up, what up, what up? So you see the setup, so you already know this is about to be a research video. Okay. All right. So I wanted to research remote viewing because okay, let me tell you how we got here. So after watching A Sheer Seven Goddess, she mentioned Billy Carson. So then I started watching Billy Carson, and then on Forbidden Knowledge TV, I started I came across remote viewing on there. I came across a class. And so I just thought it would be really cool to research, make a video and really, really research what remote viewing is. Because did I take the class? That's neither here nor there. I took the class. Okay. I took the class. I took the class. I took the class. Okay. So that's why I'm thinking this will be a really cool conversation to have. So what we're going to do, you know me, let me share my screen and then let's get into the research. Okay, so this time I was prepared more. I already had it pulled up. We're gonna go to our first handy dandy site, Wikipedia. Y'all know how I feel about Wikipedia. Okay, so remote viewing is the practice of seeking impressions about a distant or unseen subject, purportedly sensing with the mind. Typically, a remote viewer is expected to give information about an object, event, person, or location that is hidden from physical view and separated at some distance. Physicists Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff, parapsychology researchers at Stanford Research Institute, are generally credited with coining the term remote viewing to distinguish it from its closely related concept, to distinguish it from the closely related concept of clairvoyance. According to Targ, the term was first suggested by Ego Swan in December 1971 during an experiment at the American Society of Psychologic, I don't know, child, research in New York City. Remote viewing experiments have historically been criticized for the lack of proper controls and repeatability. Here we go again, there is no scientific evidence that remote viewing exists. that the topic of remote and the topic of remote viewing is generally regarded to as pseudoscience. The idea of remote viewing received renowned attention in the 1990s upon the declassification of documents related to the Stargate project. Oh my gosh, I watched the show Stargate, a $20 million research program sponsored by the US government to attempt to determine potential military applications of psychic phenomena. So there's no proof of it, but the government used it. The program ran from 1975 to 1995 and ended after evaluators reached the conclusion that remote viewers consistently failed to produce any actionable intelligence information. So it took them that long to realize that it wasn't valuable, or did they just move on and do something else? My thing is, why spend any money towards it if you felt like it had no level of importance? And I'm gonna tell you right now, okay, according to these courses, because then you can even take a remote viewing course on YouTube. There's a free one that's like 6 hours long. You can literally you can look up remote viewing institutions. Let's do it. Look, oh, remote viewing training. What's this? Is that the CIA? Wait a minute. Oh, well, they did say that they had it out, but these are CIA documents. Okay, the purpose of that okay, so in fiscal year 1860, tell me you have dyslexia without telling me. In 1986, SRI International awarded a subcontract to Consultants International, CI. The purpose of that subcontract was to assemble a detailed report by an expert viewer of the subjective experiences associated with remote viewing. The goal of CI's report was to suggest procedures that might evolve into testable training methods. This report from SRI contained an abbreviated form, the basic principles and techniques that CI has proposed. My brain started, sometimes like I started having so many ideas in my mind that it becomes challenging to read what's on the page because my brain is like running over here and it's like we're right here. So that's happening. Anyway, for the purpose of testing these ideas, two key concepts have emerged. These two concepts are that one, a perpetual window or channel to RV data for viewing, remote viewing data may be briefly open on demand through the proper application of simultaneous response and technique. And two, once access to the target has been established, correct impressions are fleeting, vague, and generally indistinct. This information is captured as bits of data, which may have a symbolic character. In fiscal year 18, why do I keep saying 18? Maybe there's something to that though. In 1986, SRI began a novice, so a new remote viewing training program using 9 individuals selected by their psychological profiling and the 2 concepts outlined above. My thing is this, okay? Just because the people you selected weren't very good at it doesn't mean that it's not possible. And also, apparently, from watching these videos that are literally available on YouTube, anyone can learn how to remote view. It's a natural thing that all human beings can do at various levels. And with practice, you can become better. I wasn't expecting to end up on the CIA website today, if I'm gonna be honest with you. So, I'm just, okay, so basic structure of a RV session. I'm just gonna say RV, okay? Even though to me an RV is a van, and I keep saying like this van, whatever. Remote viewing requires a viewer, a monitor, and a target. Practical definitions of these terms. And you can watch this, you can do this later, because it's obvious when you take the class, but the viewer is basically the person who is practicing the remote viewing. Okay, so they're the ones who are going into this state to identify what is being seeked, okay, or what is being looked for, what is being found or discovered or interpreted. The monitor is the person who tracks the progress. They are the person who gives the details about the information that's being seeked out. They're the one that tells you, okay, they're the one basically that tells you how to play the game. Okay. So they're the one that tells you, and if you're playing basketball, that you are going to shoot the basket, right? And you're going to shoot the ball, and you're going to shoot the ball, and you're supposed to be shooting the ball into this net. Okay. How you accomplish that, they'll also walk you through the steps, because the monitor is also like a trainer. Well, the monitor can train you, and the monitor is also the person who like tells you what you need to know so that you can identify what you're looking for. Like they give you the numbers because they've marked the numbers with whatever you're supposed to be looking for. All right. And you'll understand the numbers if you take the class. So then, okay, fine, I'll tell you. So the numbers, the target basically, or the of the objective is typically marked or enchanted, depending on how you look at it, with a point in time or space. So there are 8 typically random numbers that don't have a meaning according to this thing, but apparently back in the day, the numbers used to be coordinates to see if what could be seen. Interesting, right? So these numbers are written in a fraction, and you put 4 numbers on the top and you put 4 numbers on the bottom. You can literally go to a website and type in um, random number generator, or you can even come up with the numbers yourself, as far as I'm concerned, because it's not, the point is you associate those numbers with this thing, right? With a target. And that's what the monitor does, or that's what the person who's giving you the directive does. They put this number with this place. That's what it is. And so then the target is that place. It's what you're trying to identify, or the objective. It's what you're wanting to receive from this information. So for example, if you were remote viewing and what you were supposed to be remote viewing would be the pyramids of Giza or something like that, the monitor in this example, it's not always this way, but the monitor will associate the coordinates of what those random numbers, and they'll associate it in the universe with the pyramids of Giza. And then as the remote viewer, when you write your numbers down, you squiggle off. And what you receive in it, in theory, is information that can be deduced to present the Pyramid of Giza. So that's what it is. All right. A typical example of an RV session conducted at SRI for demonstration or training purposes might proceed as follows. An experimenter, not otherwise part of the session, selects a target photograph from a pool of 300 using a computer pseudo-random number generator. So they randomly pick 8 numbers, and someone that's not associated with the experiment at all goes and picks a photograph. Right, that's where we are so far. These photographs range of man-made and natural sites taken from National Geographic magazine. Why National Geographic? Of all the magazines, and of all the content, why that specifically? They could have used a globe. They could have used so many things. So why this particular magazine? Why not time in an opaque manila folder? So a manila folder that you can't see through. You can't see what's inside. In turn, is sealed inside an opaque envelope. So they're double doing it. They're putting it in they're putting this random image that was selected by some random person. They're putting it in an envelope, and then they're sealing that envelope, and then they're putting that envelope inside a manila folder, and then they're sealing that manila folder. The session monitor obtains the target envelope. The session monitor obtains the target envelope and places it in a room adjacent to the RV area. So the person who's the teacher of this particular training gets the 2 envelopes, and then she places it in a room that's near the remote viewing area. The RV data acquisition proceeds as described elsewhere in this report. So we're going to see how they got the info later. When the session ends, the monitor opens the envelope and displays it to the viewer. This feedback process appears to be crucial in reinforcing the correct perceptions of the viewer. So if it's crucial in reinforcing the correct perceptions, why wouldn't, if it's crucial, then that means that this particular thing reinforces what the person doing the exercise can do. So it helps to improve them. Interesting. Okay, so here's some more um, concepts. So targeting. This term embodies the idea that perpetual windows or channels to RV data may be briefly opened on demand through popular application of a stimulus. CI asserts that that this produce established that this procedure establishes access to see my mind is going crazy like there's like I'm just this is like very very interesting stuff, so my mind is moving faster than my eyes and mouth can keep up with. Okay. Ci asserts that this procedure establishes access to the target by reducing the mental noise of RV. So basically, what they're saying is that in whatever the system of targeting is, which could be meditating, it could be meditating, but whatever that system is, it reduces and it calms the mind down that could potentially get in the way of proper identification of the data. So, meaning that a really stressed out, busy mind will have a harder time. No, 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 no. Yes, yes. A heart will have a harder time perceiving the data. So there's some method that they do before remote viewing that allows the mind to relax and be in a relaxed state. Because when the mind is in a relaxed state, it can perceive more detailed and accurate information. That's what this is saying. All right. So perhaps that's a meditative practice that they're doing to do this. Perhaps. Bit grabbing. Once access to the target has been established, correct impressions are fleeting, vague, and generally indistinct in outline. Especially for novice viewers, this information is captured as bits of data that often have symbolic character. Correct interpretation of these impressions is the product of experience. I definitely would have to agree with this because what I've observed is that typically what people say is an interpretation of that thing. For example, the pyramids of Giza, you might, in your remote viewing experience, perceive it as fire, hot, sun, energy, really, really hot. So you might think fire. Oh, there must be a campfire. Maybe it's a fire. And then you run off with this whole thing that's not correct. So it's important because that part was confusing. It wasn't confusing, but it was something that became more clear as time went on. So it's a symbolic characteristic of this thing, but it has to be interpreted further, and that's why you sketch later down the line. But it's symbolic. So what you're catching and the information that's coming to is not to be interpreted as its literal meaning. It's symbolic of what it is. And then sometimes it can be literal, but typically it's more of like a symbolism. All right. Okay, so data acquisition on demand through noise reduction. It is CI's contention that once any target of interest has been agreed upon by the viewer, data regarding the target is immediately available below the conscious awareness of the viewer. So once the person who is doing the remote viewing agrees that they are going to find this target on the subconscious, on a level, there is information that they could instantly, immediately access just by agreeing. That's what that sounds like it's saying. However, the normal mental noise, example, concerns, memories, imaginations, and analysis of everyday activity usually prevents access to this data. So when people are thinking about other things, it will cause it's harder for them to access the underground instant information that they perceive. So it's important to quiet the mind. That's why it's important to quiet the mind. That makes sense because everything else is like, oh, you're supposed to just do this. But why? But it's because it literally can impact your ability to access your natural human gifts. Boom. Consider my mind blown. All right. CI claims that all individuals will occasionally and spontaneously lapse into brief periods where the noise drops and a flash of intuition brings RV information to the level of awareness. This process is schematically displayed in figure 1. So basically what they're saying is that no matter who you are, there is a point after you agree with the numbers and after you do this mental reduction noise, there is a point where every single person taps into their underlying intuition. And at that moment, that's when the data comes through. And that's a graph. That's a chart. That's the chart. All right. So this is the quiet state. It like dips, and then the data. So right here is where the data and the instinct meet and merge. Hmm. 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 What the heck? All right. Once the target has been defined and a need to describe the target has been established, the key to accessing this data on demand is to artificially stimulate these periods of lowered noise. Then and only then does the viewer obtain the data. Oh, wow. In practice, this form of noise reduction is reproduced through a stimulus response procedure where a neutral word such as target is provided to the viewer by the monitor. At that instant, the viewer's task is to capture the very first mental impression he or she receives. By subjective report, the data access window is approximately 0.5 to 1 second in duration. That's on their average. So that's according to the data that they perceived. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's true for everybody. So once again, every point of information we take in with a grain of salt, because this is the result of people who were inaccurate most of the time. So just keep that in mind as well. All right. Figure 2 displays the key element of the RV process. So the stimulus occurs. So whenever the stimulus happens, which seems to be when they say target, it goes down, and then the RV data is collected, and then the background noise starts again. So the more you can reduce the background noise, even in daily life, the more you'll be able to receive data and information. Interesting. 2 techniques often suggested to further reduce the noise are sensory, see, there we go again, are sensory isolations and trance induction hypnosis. sensory isolation through use of white noise, visual gray field, Grans field, and other special environments, however, appear to increase vivid visual imagery, which contributes to additional noise rather than reducing it. Let's read that again. Two techniques suggested to further reduce noise are sensory isolation and trance induction. So hypnotizing someone. Hypnotism through use of white noise, visual gray field, and other special environments, however, appear to increase vivid visual imagery, which contributes to additional noise rather than reducing it. That's from their perspective. But basically what they're saying is by hypnotizing someone, it made it harder for them to interpret what was being targeted, because then their imagination kind of did its own thing with the concept that was being produced. The possibility of using hypnosis as a tool for improving RV through enhanced recall after a session will be investigated at SRI in 1987. However, as with sensory isolation related tasks other than RV carried out under hypnosis has not produced substantially better results in the past than those in waking state. Remote viewing at SRI has always been carried out in a normal interview format. So they're basically saying that hypnosis didn't really help, but I think you should still try it. I think that's their perspective, but you don't know what it would do in your experience. So I think it's still worth giving it a try. Given that the stimulus response technique, coupled with a need to describe a target, can produce brief periods of lower noise, the next key element to a successful RV is to correctly recognize and interpret the impressions perceived. That's true. Accomplished viewers appear to agree that correct RV data is perceived as impressionistic and generally vague. So basically, like I said before, it might be like fire, and it's because it's hot there. It's not because it's actually fire. It's not actually on fire. So it's important not to associate meanings too heavily, because it's just an impression. It's a one layer of understanding of what you're looking at. Novice viewers in particular find that valid information is nearly always non-visual for them. Okay, experience, because who were the 9 people that were doing this experiment? That's what I would want to know. Anyway, experienced viewers report that the correct visual impressions are largely indistinct in outline. This unusual mode of perception requires correct reporting of a very brief exposure to impressionistic data. To facilitate that reporting of these impressions, CI has proposed a series of symbols that appear to represent the general features of targets used in novice training. A representation of these symbols, called bits, with their usual interpretations, are shown in Figure 3. So basically, they have created these simple versions of everything in the universe. They have created, or they're using very simple versions of things to describe everything in the universe that we are currently aware of, like sentient beings, beings that are alive have a similar symbol. And then water has a symbol and all these things. And so they're very, very high level understandings and very, very high level symbols that beginners use so that they can perceive what's happening. The novice viewer must first learn to identify the brief period of access which follows the stimulus, and then to recognize the fleeting impression in which the correct data is contained. Once this process has been established, the viewer can learn to make use of the data symbols correctly to correctly report bits corresponding to the target. After a period of practice comprising roughly 25 to 30 viewings, individuals with sufficient motivation and latent ability to continue the process will begin to distinguish themselves. So the longer you do this, the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. That's what it is. The more you do it, the better you'll be at it. So angular lines can mean steep cliffs or structures. That could be like a building, that could be a house, that could be a mountain, that could be a pyramid, that could be a skyscraper, that could be a number of things. Curved lines are bound area or channel, maybe like a little hill, something like that, maybe a fence. Straight lines are a boundary or water or land, or some kind of something like that. Those wavy lines, that could also be water. They're saying it could be rolling hills, terrain. So you can see how these things could be interpreted as so many things. These jagged lines could be hills or mountains. It could also be energy. It could also be a burst of something, or an erratic emotion. The dots are saying like shade or shaded area, but that could also be energy. That could be because that could be stars. That could be so many things, So that's just a general thing that they're saying, but interpreting it is what they're saying is the next layer. Okay. Once a viewer has grasped the fundamental principles of noise reduction after a stimulus and learned to identify the data bits correctly, further improvement requires practicing a structured procedure. CI has separated that procedure into 3 phases. So once they're able to properly understand what their things are, access noise reduction, uniquely identify the target, establish a need to describe the target. Oh, interesting. Supply a stimulus through a neutral word, target, capture and hold the first impression following the access word. So there's a need, establish a need to describe. So why do you need to do this thing? What's the purpose? Why do you need to do this thing? And then with target and boom, boom, boom. Objectify data recording. Quickly write down the first impression using an appropriate bit symbol. Recall that correct data will appear vague and indistinct. Immediately take a brief break of 10 to 30 seconds following a response. If any impression appears vivid or distinct, record and circle them. Such information is known as interpretive overlay. It is almost always incorrect and is disregarded. Another technique for that is like write a D- and then the word. And like I said, there are classes, so you can really go more into that. Qualify data interpretation. Repeat all the steps above until the target is described in detail. As each impression is received, describe the target in terms of texture, function, color, age, motion, etc. When the descriptions appear complete in the session by receiving information about the target, the actual target, so get feedback. And keep in mind that like there are so many methods of doing remote viewing. Like I used to think before I started researching that there was like one way to do this thing, but no, there are multiple ways of doing this. But it's basically all the same thing. Okay, results. Whether the percipient is a novice, advanced, or expert viewer, the foregoing procedures apply. So they're saying no matter what, you still have to do these things. Now, how you do them is relative, but those things still should be done first. With rare notable exceptions, CI asserts that correct descriptions of targets are always built out of much smaller bits of data that are gradually assembled into a whole. So that's why you have to do the process multiple times, because your symbols and the information are gradual build up, and you might get information once again with the pyramids of Giza. You might get information about the sun, that it's hot AF there, and that there is a big fireball gazing down on it. The second layer of information is you might get a water source. The third level of information, you might get the pyramids. You might tap into the sand. So you might tap into the energy around it. You might tap into the history of the space. So it's important to do it multiple times when you're targeting a specific space, because when you do that, you become better and better, and you get more and more information in the layered. It's like reading a book. You get, the further you get into it, the more you learn about the characters. So the further and the more interpretation of a space you do, the more you'll begin to know what you're looking at. As the viewer progresses from novice to expert, so as you continue to do it and you get better and better, the amount of time spent on the various steps of the procedure changes. For example, an expert should find access routine and focus the most attention on details of form and function. A detailed discussion of the division of effort as a function of expertise may be found in Appendix A. Okay. Anatomy of viewing. An example of how the foregoing process is applied by an expert may be found in figures 4A through 4F. These figures comprise the entire response of the viewer for a given session. Other than labeling the transcripts, other than the labeling, the transcripts have not been edited in any way. Where the viewer's handwriting is illegible or where our abbreviated used, we have provided a translation. Figure A, initial access period. Note that the uniqueness requirement of the target has been satisfied by writing down name, date, and time. Name, date, time, and session number. This is the access phase. Need a motivation for a description where provided by informing the viewer this RV was a series intended to calibrate the viewer's proficiency. The objectivity phase, initial primary bits are of a steep angle, drop off, and flat area. Multiple bits, a series of connected impressions, serve to fill in the gap between the two primary bits. Access is brought to an end by writing break. This amount of data is much greater than that which a novice would perceive during an initial access period. So now we're about to see an example. I guess we're not. Where are the pictures at? Okay. Maybe if I turn the iPad. Okay, now it's freaking sideways. Okay, but let's just everyone turn sideways. So this was done by someone named Gary. So it said he had the target there, the access. So that's the date right here. That's the number. what the, and then there's the time there as well. So the primary bits where he thought it was something steep, he took a there were multiple other bits. Then he had steep and flat. Then he took a breath. And then he has some kind of structures and he circled it because he thinks that those are some interpretation overlay. His writing is horrendous. Anyway, objectivity, well bounded. I don't know, flat, hard surface. So then he took he had target, so he wrote target up there. And then he just like wrote his lines and then interpreted those lines, and then he ended, and then he took a breath. And so he did it over and over and over again. He has steps, he has verticals. So these are just examples. And so then he has another one. He said rises up very, very large, or rise up very sharply, man-made, stone. So he's like describing different things. And some of these things are similar, like this, steep. And it showed up again, steps, showed up again, sharp, stone, flat. That showed up twice. And so this is comprising whatever, multiple principles that he came up with before. And then now it's even more. He has the same thing again, but a little bit different. That now the structures are added right here. Those are the structures. He was steep. It was a man-made structure. He has ruins there. Structure, bounded. And it was that. But you see how it's interpreted strangely, because he didn't have it as all one thing. He had stone over here. If you look at it, it looks like a mountain. But that's not what it was. But maybe it's near a mountain, you know? Get that right. All right, there, whatever. Let's close enough. Okay, so some indications of previous success of the training method can be found in existing data. In 1986, CI first began the outline of the basic elements of an RV novice training program. 6 individuals with limited or no exposure to RV were selected on the basic interest and subsequently participating in a series of lectures and experimental sessions that served as the model for the 1986 program. 2 of the participants from the 1984 program I'm just like so into this. Okay, in 1984 program demonstrated independent, statistically significant evidence of RV ability. So 2 out of the 6 were significantly showed that they just were more proficient. During 1986, 3 of the best viewers from the 1984 program and SI's expert viewer participated, and CI's expert viewer participated in a series of 6 RV sessions, each for another task in the program. As of the time of the 1986 experiment, all 3 previous novices who have participated in a total of approximately 100 viewings each. All of these viewings followed the procedure proposed by CI. As shown in detail in another report, some asterisk of 3 of the 4 viewers independently scored statistically significant in the 6-session series. If the probability of a successful series is 0.05, the binomial probability of 3 out of 4 successful series is really low. Two of the three 1984 novices scored significantly, one scoring slightly better than the expert viewer. This result suggests that at least for certain individuals, the viewing ability can be learned. Whether these particular viewers learn successfully as a result of practice, motivation, latent ability, CI's technology, or a combination of all four elements is at this time unclear. Considerable future experimentation will be required to begin to determine the relative importance of each element. So it did work. The further you get down, it did work. It worked for some people. It did work. It's just something to think about. Conclusions and recommendations. While another test of CI's training methodology is ongoing, there is subjective evidence that this is a successful approach. From CI's perspective, the key elements in training RV appear to be latent ability, motivation, structured practice, and the conceptual framework supplied by CI. At this time, the relative importance of each has not been experimentally determined, but they did say latent ability first, then second, motivation, then third, structured practice, and then fourth, structured framework. So that can't be for no reason. We recommend that if results warrant CI's task be expanded to include experts as well as novice and advanced training. We also suggest that rigorous tests of CI's concepts of training be formulated in order to determine which may prove to be more effective. A proposed method for remote viewing training. Wow. Okay, I was about to say Mary. Mr. Gary Langford founded Consultants International in 1976 to develop and apply RV abilities to problems insoluble by conventional means. Since its founding, CI clients have included 5 government organizations, 4 industrial corporations, 4 commercial companies, and 3 private individuals. So if it's not working, if it doesn't work, why? This is the first published report on remote viewing methodology by CI. A fortunate involvement with SRI International almost 13 years ago provided an initial exposure to research in parapsychology. That exposure to repeatable and verifiable psychic functioning dramatically changed some of my basic concepts about the nature of science. CI wishes to acknowledge that many individuals whose suggestions, criticisms, and support have at one time or another sustained and directed the development of insights to further understand and teach remote viewing. Let me tell you something. When I said I was going to make a remote viewing video, I had no idea what this was going to be comprised of, but I dang sure didn't expect to be where we are right now. Okay? I did not expect to be doing this. My throat is itching. Oh, right there. Through work at SRI and other laboratories, a number of individuals have demonstrated the ability to accurately perceive information inaccessible through conventional senses, and to convey their impressions in words and symbols. At times, they can describe events, places, people, objects, and feelings with very high quality. Although latent ability undoubtedly plays a significant role, it is CI's contention that this RV ability can be learned to varying degrees. The purpose of this report is to outline a discipline of structured practice and interpretation through which RV can be taught. This report is based on over 13 observing novices remote view. In the report, we will utilize numerous specialized terms that have been coined to provide a standard reference vocabulary. Although some terms are discussed in detail in the text, a glossary is provided at the end of this report. Okay. Foremost, in any discussion of remote viewing, there are results typically achieved. Responses of near photographic quality with much non-visual detail of remote targets are produced about 10 to 30% of the time. Whoa, what? Responses of near photographic quality and with much non-visual detail of remote targets are produced about 10 to 30% of the time by the more experienced expert viewers. Interesting. So the more experienced viewers, 10 to 30% of the time, they are able to perceive really, really, really accurate quality images and sketches of what is being perceived. The objective of this training methodology is to enhance an individual's innate capability to produce high quality renderings and information. Figures A1 through A4 show examples of RV results. I think we looked at those earlier, that led to the current method, or maybe not. These examples show the evaluation and quality from novice to advanced through expert levels. Although there are many analytical tools that can assist an analyst in scoring the match between the target and the viewer's rendering, the reader may determine the relative quality of the remote viewings by visual inspection. The term target, so this is basically the same thing we already read, just from another perspective. Okay, the term target can include anything imaginable: objects, events, people, places, or functions, etc. Targets are, so it doesn't just have to be a place. That's just a way that they train, but it doesn't just have to be a place. Targets are identified by an agreement between the remote viewer and the monitor at the time of the viewing. Targets are strictly defined by their property of uniqueness. Uniqueness is any characteristic that separates the target from all the other potential targets. Examples of unique characteristics range from designating as a target a single photograph in a sealed envelope to complex schemes of numbering and coding. Uniqueness embodies both the concepts of temporal and spatial uniqueness. Therefore, both the time of the target viewing and identification of the target in the mind monitor are necessary to satisfy unique. Lord, I didn't understand anything that I just said there. A more detailed and accurate rendering shown in figure F2, the target New Orleans Superdome was again specified by the presence of an outbound. Okay, so they're describing the images now of outbound individual acting as a beacon. Greater detail, more precise correspondence between target and rendering and information of a non-visual nature tip, tip typifies advanced RV level. Even though most report viewings from advanced individuals could be readily matched to the correct target out of a potential, I think we should look at it so we can see. Oh, wow. This one was really good. Oh, wow. They're both good. So you can do this. Okay. Okay. So figure 2A was that? So that was a advanced level person. Figure 4-3, I mean A3 is an expert as well. The target was designated by the question, describe the individual who committed a certain offense. I wish they had the pictures next to the explanation on a specific date. Describe the individual who committed a certain offense on a specific date. A very accurate portrayal of facial characteristics was achieved. The expert level remote viewer can produce high quality renderings about 10% of the time. In general, the overall quality is significantly better than observed with the advanced levels. Further distinction between these three levels of proficiency is discussed in later sections. They should like write underneath like which one was which. So that's the person. It's a pretty good sketch. Okay, so the figure one took 20 minutes and figure 2, 3 were completed in 90 minutes and figure 4 was created in 12 minutes. So figure 2 and 3, let's go to 2 and 3, 2 right here and 3, those were done in 90 minutes in a 90-minute session. Figure 1 took 20 minutes. This one took 20 minutes. And then figure 4 took 12 minutes. I didn't see a figure 4. Oh, okay, right here. Figure 4 took 20 minutes. So the longer you're in there, it seems like the more detailed the information becomes. In the first example, figure A illustrates a novice response to the target, Grant's tomb. The target was designated by the presence of a person at the actual site acting as a beacon. A sensory review of the target and viewer's rendering shows a weak correspondence between the gross exterior features of the Grant tomb and the general shape of the drawing. In general, the quality of most novice level response is insufficient to blind match the correct target out of a group of candidate target selections. However, similarities in outlines and forms between novice level responses and appropriate targets can be identified. It is these similarities that serve as a fundamental reinforcement so necessary for the functioning to develop. So basically, I don't know. So what I'm gathering from this is that like newbies have, for the most part, have newbie level responses, and for the most part, a novice will not be able to properly identify what the target is. They might have aspects of it, but typically a novice is not able to do that. So, like, and they're saying like, okay, let's say it was this tomb and then there was a whole bunch of other examples. A novice would not necessarily be able to select which image it was. Even if you put all the renderings on the table that could be relatively similar, you wouldn't be able to know for a fact, okay, this is what they're talking about. Whereas an expert, you might not be able to know exactly what it is, but you'll be more close with them than you would be with a more beginner. That's what I got from that. All right, guys, I think we've been on here for a minute and a half. So we're going to stop here on page 42, and then we'll run it back another time. Oh, like this video, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know also, like, what else do you guys want to research? Because I love researching and learning about new things. So if there's like something that's like on your mind and you want to research it, let me know. See you later out there.